ASMR Magical Tools. Hi. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, we're going to be talking about the week ahead, which is August 30th through September 5th, Monday to Sunday. The moon is going to start out in Gemini on Monday, and by Sunday the 5th will be entering the sign of Virgo. We do have some planets in Libra at this time. We have Virgo. We have Venus. Sorry, I always get those two mixed up. Guess where my Venus is? And we have Mercury, also in Libra. Starting out on Monday, August 30th, we will be in the 6th lunar mansion, which is called Al-Hana, meaning a mark. And this refers to two stars in the feet of the constellation Gemini. The themes of this lunar mansion are form, wisdom, bonds of attraction, affinity, friendship, and love. Do remember from last week that overnight Mercury is entering the sign of Libra. Very early in the morning, so a quarter past midnight or a quarter past 3 a.m., depending on if you're on one of the coasts of the United States. The moon, which is in the sign of Gemini, is going to square the sun in the sign of Virgo. And Sun in Virgo brings to light practical matters, puts an emphasis on your daily routines and your health, while the moon in Gemini can be a little more whimsical. Bringing forward emotional states like you would have with a sibling. There's also the potential for duality in your own life to come to light at this time. And these things not necessarily being at odds to that very pragmatic Sun in Virgo energy, but complicating things just a bit. About 2 hours later, the moon in the sign of Gemini is going to trine Saturn, which is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. This trine is excellent for all of these things where the established order of things has been resistant to change. This moon in Gemini energy could offer some very interesting insights. People thinking of one another as brothers and sisters, and that coming to light. People looking at not just the duality of situations, but the gray areas in between. However, this is going to be very early in the morning. It could come through in dreams. In the middle of the day, the moon in the sign of Gemini is going to sextile Chiron, which is retrograde in the sign of Aries. Now, when Chiron is retrograde, you're going to be forced to revisit things that you feel like you have already fixed in your life. And when we're talking about Chiron in Aries, this is things like selfish behaviors and also beginning things and not following through with them. So be aware that at this time, things like that might come up. But because we have this moon in Gemini sextile, you have the potential to use that Gemini creative problem solving to work your way back through this situation. Finally, we have an overnight energy, which is a trine between the moon in the sign of Gemini and Venus, which is now in Libra. Venus in Libra is excellent for relationships of a romantic nature, for profitable business partnerships also, forging these close, tight bonds with people that are steeped in loyalty and mutual respect. And this trine with the moon in Gemini, you will see again that inclination to treat others as your siblings and have that kind of closeness with them. Now, this is an overnight energy, so there could be dream work that occurs, or because this is occurring either on the West Coast at 9:30 p.m. or the East Coast at midnight, it is possible that you could be out and about late night somewhere and making new connections with people or reinforcing pre-existing relationships. The next day that we will talk about is Tuesday, August 31st. We will be in the 7th lunar mansion, which is Altira, the forearm. And this refers to two stars which are now in the head or the heads of the constellation of Gemini. Previous constellations placed those stars in the forearm of a lion constellation. The themes of this lunar mansion are divine throne, so rule by divine right, a cosmic axis pole, knowing the center of the universe, glorification, supplication, invocation, and gain. Very fortuitous. Very early in the morning, there's going to be a quincunx, and this is between the sun in the sign of Virgo and Saturn retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. So, practical matters, daily routines, things to do with health, analytical thinking might drive some action regarding the way that very established aspects of hierarchies and in our society being challenged by current affairs. It's very early in the morning, though. A little bit after that, the moon, which is in the sign of Gemini, is going to square Mars. And Mars is also in Virgo at this time. So this could be a situation where people desire free will and other people are striving to have them constrained to their own ideas of daily routines and what makes sense to them, their own reality. And perhaps people are not as willing to be constrained by those things, and thus we have a square placement. Toward the middle of the morning, the moon in the sign of Gemini is then going to be square Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Neptune retrograde in Pisces. And remember, this is a very potent energy for anyone who is developing their psychic awareness. This begins an opportune period. If you wait 2 hours after the square, things will be very clear. And you can use this opportune period to connect with others or anything with which you are involved. So, on the West Coast, this opportune period is going to start at 6:41 in the morning. So you want to wait until 8:40 a.m. And then on the East Coast, this opportune period is going to start at 9:41 a.m. You're going to want to wait until 11:40. And this opportune period will last until the Gemini moon is void, of course. And that is going to be about 1:50 p.m. on the West Coast and 4:50 p.m. on the East Coast. So a good long window for you to use. In the middle of the day, the moon, which is in the sign of Gemini, is going to quincunx Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, okay? Now remember all the things that we've been talking about in regards to this Pluto retrograde and why it is causing so much volatility in the job market and so many changes. This Gemini moon, again, is going to bring out people's feelings of sibling camaraderie. It's a very creative energy, similar in some ways, but not quite the same to Leo energies. This Gemini energy is all about ideas and communication. When the moon goes void, of course, the moon, I'm speaking of being the moon in Gemini, it is going to trine Jupiter, which is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius, 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 Aquarius. Remember that this Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius is expanding in all directions and could influence your social media presence, your friend groups, associations of which you are a part, and other groups of people. It can also have to do with novel or iconoclastic ideas expanding. And with this trine, with the Gemini moon, before it moves into the sign of Cancer overnight, you have the potential for this sibling camaraderie type feelings with other people, new ideas, and other Gemini moon traits that we have been talking about. As I mentioned, then, overnight, the moon is going to be moving into its native sign of Cancer. Next, we will be talking about Wednesday, September the 1st. September the 1st. September the 1st. We will be in the 8th lunar mansion, or the moon will be, rather, in the 8th lunar mansion, which is Al-Nathra, the gap. And this refers to the nose of that lion constellation I mentioned before. Now, those stars are part of the constellation of Cancer. The themes that we will be looking at for the 8th lunar mansion are the pedestal, the pearl, numinous support, which I think has to do with money, victorious energies, alliance, and conquest. At 4:45 on the west coast and 7:45 on the east coast in the morning, the moon, which is now in the sign of Cancer, is going to square Mercury in Libra. Now, Mercury in Libra is wonderful for communication, especially when communication is needed that is not rooted in emotional thinking. However, because the moon is going to be in Cancer and very much in that emotional, watery place, Mercury in Libra might be seen as a bit harsh or unfeeling. So be mindful of that in your communications. If you are up at that hour, especially if you are going into a workplace, that people might just be in their feelings, and to add a few little niceties, sprinkle little niceties into that Mercury in Libra strong communication. In the middle of the afternoon, the moon in Cancer is going to be quincunx Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius, which Saturn is retrograde at this time, remember? And so Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, we're dealing with established hierarchies which are resisting the change that is coming in due to that Aquarius placement. It can also be hierarchies that involve large groups of people. And it's very difficult in those situations to have everyone's needs met the way that they need to be. And so while some people might think they are very established, there is always the potential for tension and for change. Now, because there is a quincunx with that moon in Cancer energy, that is going to drive some action, some kind of action, and that is going to be the middle of the afternoon on Wednesday, September 1st. That people are going to demand for at least their emotional needs to be met. Later in the evening, toward the evening hours, the moon in Cancer is going to sextile the sun in Virgo. Now, this moon in Cancer energy is very emotionally rooted, and the sun in Virgo is very much about analytical thinking, attention to detail, daily routines, and health. So this is going to be an opportunity to explore your emotional connection to all of those things. The moon in Cancer also deals heavily with the ebb and flow of lunar energies. So that might come into play with that sextile placement as well. Overnight, the moon in the sign of Cancer is going to square Chiron in Aries, which is retrograde. So any things could come back up related to selfishness or beginning things and not finishing them that maybe you feel like you have already resolved. This moon in Cancer energy can be a little bit selfish in that it's very emotionally driven energy. So it's going to give you the opportunity to revisit those things. So next, let's look at Thursday, September 2nd. The moon will be in the 9th lunar mansion, which is Al-Tarf, and has to do with the glance of the lion's eyes. The themes of this lunar mansion are divine wrath, severity, disempowerment, infirmity, frustration, and misfortune. Doesn't necessarily mean that those things will occur on this day. And obviously, there are ways that those traits, even negative ones, can be positively utilized for spell work. At 3:33 in the morning on the west coast of the United States and 6:33 in the morning on the east coast, the moon in the sign of Cancer is going to sextile Uranus, which is retrograde in the sign of Taurus. Uranus retrograde in the sign of Taurus. This Uranus retrograde in Taurus, there could be property or turf disputes based in people's need for comfort and stability. This sextile with the moon in Cancer will temper that possibility in that people's people can appeal to the emotions of others, and that Cancer energy is very much about reciprocal emotions. Reciprocal. Wherein Cancers might not always be the most empathic and able to read other people's emotional states, but do deal with their emotions from the perspective of wanting to treat others the way that they are treated. And I did mention that because we do have a significant time there with 3:33 in the morning. It is the deepest part of the night. Midnight is not necessarily the deepest part of the night. 3:33 is in the deepest part of the night because that is before it starts getting light again. In the middle of the day, Mars, which is in the sign of Virgo, is going to be in opposition to Neptune, retrograde in Pisces. Now remember that this Neptune retrograde in Pisces energy is very much about empathic feelings, psychic awareness, psychic attunement, and the expansion of that within each and every one of us. This Mars in Virgo energy is very much an energy of feeling like you know what's best for another person and wanting to force that upon them, and therefore is opposed to a more well-rounded existence based in understanding of the entire picture. So you might think you know and end up not knowing on this day. And because of some of the themes of the lunar mansion, the ninth lunar mansion, disempowerment and severity, be very cautious of this energy in the middle of the day on Thursday, September 2nd. In the middle of the afternoon, the moon in the sign of Cancer is going to square Venus in Libra. And remember, this Venus in Libra energy is very good for partnerships, very good. But where we have the moon in Cancer squaring its position, there is the potential there for people's emotions and personal emotions and feelings to get in the way of their logical mind understanding their relationship with another person. Be aware of that on Thursday, August 2nd as well. Later in the evening, we have the moon in the sign of Cancer, and that is going to be trine Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Neptune is retrograde in Pisces, and as I've mentioned before, this is very excellent for your psychic attunement and developing your psychic awareness, because there is expansion of it in all directions. It can also be a very positive placement for communion with your higher power. And this moon in Cancer, this water trine, is going to be very much about being in your feelings, and will open up the potential for empathy in these Cancerian situations where we do typically see a desire to treat others as one would want to be treated. Now we are understanding more about how people might want to be treated. Later in the evening, the moon in Cancer is going to sextile Mars in the sign of Virgo. Mars in the sign of Virgo. Being very pushy with one's daily routines and possibly with health advice for others. Things like that. But where we have this sextile with the moon in Cancer, there's going to be wanting to treat others the way one wants to be treated, and thus will take the edge off of any pushiness that might be associated with that placement. Finally, overnight, the moon in Cancer is going to go void, of course. The moon in Cancer is going to be void, of course, before it goes into the sign of Leo, and is going to be in opposition to Pluto in retrograde in Capricorn. And this might contribute to some breakthroughs regarding your feelings about work situations and about your career. It is an opposition, so it might not be very comfortable or very easy, but those are the times when you have the best opportunities to reach a very startling and astonishing catharsis regarding subject matter such as this. Now let's talk about Friday, September 3rd. The moon will be in the 10th lunar mansion, which is called Al-Jabha, or the brow of Leo. And this is the constellation, or the part of the constellation which includes the star Regulus. The themes of this lunar mansion are power, success, aid, healing, recovery, improvement, help, and increasing strength. So in a way, tempering a lot of the themes that we saw overall from the previous lunar mansion, Al-Tarf. Right before the moon goes into Leo, or rather, it's a bit before, but it's after the moon is void, of course. The moon in Cancer is going to quincunx Jupiter in Aquarius. And remember that Jupiter is retrograde at this time, okay? So don't forget, Jupiter being retrograde means that expansion is occurring from all sides. And it could be in an area like your social media or your friend group expanding, or that you are starting to meet more and more people, or that a bunch of iconoclastic ideas are just bursting out at this time. Now, I do have to give a disclaimer about void of course moons. I am going by the Llewellyn Daily Planetary Guide, and I trust them to tell me the appropriate time for the void of course moon. So if you have any input that you'd like to share about that, please let me know down in the comments. This quincunx between the moon in Cancer and Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius is going to happen quite early in the morning, so almost 1:15 midnight on the west coast, and almost 1:15 3 a.m. on the east coast of the United States. And as I mentioned, there's a possibility for all this expansion in your life. So where the moon in Cancer comes into this is that people's emotional reciprocity for others is at the forefront, and this could drive some action as far as expanding social groups. Around 9 in the morning or around noon, again, this is going to depend on if you are on either one of the United States coasts. The moon is then going to enter the sign of Leo, moon in Leo. And the emphasis is on creativity, when you have a moon in Leo, and creative projects, also on romance and the emotions that go with it. In the evening, the middle of the evening hours, Venus, which is in Libra at this time, Venus is in Libra at this time, right? Good for partnerships, is going to quincunx Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So this open psychic awareness and empathy might lead to a breakthrough or the beginning of a new relationship. It doesn't have to be romantic. It could also be a business partnership, especially if that business is related to any of the Piscean themes, such as incarceration is one of those themes, but also psychic awareness, empathy, caring for others, endings, secrets, or hidden knowledge rather. Secrets is more Scorpio. We have some overnight energies to talk about. We have quite a few for Friday, September 3rd. The moon in Leo is going to sextile Mercury in the sign of Libra. So an excellent time for communication and new ideas about creative projects and products, of course, too. Excuse me, because this is going to occur at 10:15 p.m. on the West Coast and 1 a.m. on the East Coast. There is the potential that a lot of you will be doing late night work. And do remember to take advantage of the 10th lunar mansion energies, such as power and success and recovery. After this, the sun in the sign of Virgo is going to quincunx Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries. And remember, Chiron in Aries is retrograde at this time, so anything related to selfishness or beginning things and not finishing them that you think you've resolved, those things could come back up at this time. And when we're dealing with Sun in Virgo, that has to do with daily routines, health, organization, attention to detail. So any number of those things could give you the opportunity to revisit any of those Chiron in Aries situations and resolve them. And this is a quincunx, so action will be taken. And finally, our last overnight energy for Friday, September 3rd, is going to be the moon in the sign of Leo in opposition to Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. All of that creative thinking might be getting you in trouble late at night with established entities. So be very careful on your own account. This is the kind of energy that could have you run afoul of law enforcement. I'm not saying that's specifically what's going to happen to any of you. But maybe if you find yourself out past midnight on Friday, September 3rd, keep your head down and be a little more low-key than you might normally. It is an opposition, so if you really feel like sticking your neck out there, there is the potential for great change, because of course an opposition does give you that opportunity for great change. Honestly, this would be the perfect time for some kind of spell work. But don't say I didn't warn you. My concern is for your safety. So now we're going to talk about Saturday, September 4th. Saturday, September 4th. And the lunar mansion for Saturday, September 4th is Al-Zubra, which is the mane of Leo. The themes associated with the 11th lunar mansion are lordship, mastery, numinous charisma. So again, I think numinous refers to financial increase, reverence, awe, worship, and prestige. So most of the lunar mansions associated with the sign of Leo and the constellation of Leo are very benefic. We already talked about some very massive overnight transits. In the middle of the morning, on Saturday, September 4th, the moon in Leo is going to trine Chiron in Aries. So what I would recommend for this, because Chiron is retrograde, any creative projects that you might have abandoned in the past and not finished, this would be an excellent time to revisit any creative projects that never really got what they needed to succeed. This might be the time to bring something out of the closet or out of the storeroom. Around the middle of the day, so closer to noon on the West Coast and closer to 3 p.m. on the East Coast, and that is if you're in the United States. The moon in Leo is going to square Uranus in Taurus. And this energy, Uranus in Taurus, is very pragmatic, and is geared toward finding financial security, especially for groups of people. It's all about joint finances and possessions and stability. So, and remember that Uranus is retrograde right now. So people might be having backward thinking ideas about what it's going to take to establish that security. Keep that in mind, because that moon in Leo, of course, has to do with creative endeavors and romantic kind of the heat of passion, things like that. And so might create some tension regarding Uranus in Taurus situations. Later in the evening, Mercury, which is currently in the sign of Libra, is going to be trine Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius. And remember that I said before that Saturn is retrograde at this time. And so all of those established things, this can be like the government, the military, the police, this could even be like corporations, billionaires, people who are in power are resisting any kind of change, which is what Aquarius is bringing in. Aquarius also has to do with big groups of people, so there could be a pushback because of that retrograde. So, Mercury in Libra trine that Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. There could be some kind of communication, especially Mercury in Libra is very good for business contracts. So, that being in the evening hours of Saturday, September 4th. So finally, now we're going to talk about Sunday, September 5th. And before I finish up this astrology and ephemera video, I just wanted to take a quick moment and express my gratitude to all of you who watch this channel, to all of you who comment regularly. I do try to give you little hearts, even if I don't comment every time. I do really appreciate your kind words, and I do think about the things that you say to me in the comments. I do try to respond, but I talk so much in the videos. Sometimes I feel like there's not more to say. I'm a person of few words most of the time, and I just hope that you can feel the positive vibes that I'm sending out to all of you. The lunar mansion for Sunday, September 5th, is Al-Sarfa, which is the changer, and it has to do with the tail of the constellation of Leo, but is not just seen as the tail of Leo, but also as a serpent, also seen as a serpent. Scary business. So, the themes that we are seeing with the 12th lunar mansion: strife, combat, separation, constriction, hindrance of movement, and conflict. Now, this is similar to Altarf in some ways. So the 9th and the 12th lunar mansions can be a bit harsh. But remember, especially when we're dealing with constriction and hindrance of movement, if there is anything that you need to bind in your life, these are excellent lunar mansions for that to occur. Now, I do not endorse the binding of people. For one, that means that that person is bound to you, and that might not be something that you want. Secondly, I am a huge proponent of free will. It's not about controlling other people. It's about making other people believe that it was their idea in the first place. So let's get into the ephemera. Very early in the morning, very early. Not quite 2 a.m. on the West Coast, and not quite 5 a.m. on the East Coast. The moon in the sign of Leo is quincunx Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Remember, that has to do with this psychic expansion, and it could lead to a very odd hour inspiration for you with that moon in Leo energy emphasizing creativity. Now, the quincunx means that there should be an action attached to this transit, but because it's overnight, this could be something that occurs in a dream state. So make sure, I really hope that a lot of you are keeping up with dream journaling. It's very effective for many things. So now, closer to 5 and 8 a.m. respectively within the United States. In the Southern Hemisphere as well. So in the Western Hemisphere, countries between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. The moon in Libra. The moon in Leo. The moon in Leo is going to sextile Venus, and Venus is in Libra. This is an excellent romantic energy. Some of you might be awake at this time. If it has to do with an office romance, this could also be good for creative business ideas. So keep that in mind also. And I only endorse office romances between people who are not being duplicitous about any romantic dealings. You don't want to mess something like that up, because that's where you work. A little bit later in the morning, so this is the middle of the morning now, we have the moon in the sign of Leo, quincunx Pluto retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. So again, this creative push from the moon in Leo could lead to some revelation, which, using that very mutably charged with the retrograde energy of Pluto transiting Capricorn. So Capricorn is a cardinal sign. It is not mutable. The cardinal signs tend to be truer to their natures. The fixed signs truer to themselves. And then the mutable signs are very flexible. But where we have Pluto retrograde, that is a very malleable energy, I guess is the word that I should have used. Because in the context of astrology, mutables means something very specific. So it's important to be aware of the terminologies. So I apologize for any confusion that might have caused. Again, this quincunx could lead to a very important action. This creative energy coming in, possibly creating new possibilities for you as far as career is concerned. The moon in Leo then is going to go void, of course, and is going to be in opposition to Jupiter, which is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. Now, this Jupiter in Aquarius, remember, is great for expansion of social groups. Because we have this opposition with the moon in Leo, where we have this very grandiose and creative energy. It is possible. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but because it is an opposition, that moon in Leo energy could come out in a way that seems very self-aggrandizing or self-promoting. So just be careful of that on Sunday, September 5th, especially because we are dealing with the energies of the 12th lunar mansion, which involve strife, combat, and separation. Hindrance of movement then being also in opposition to that expansive Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. In the middle of the afternoon toward the evening, the moon is then going to enter the sign of Virgo. You're going to be very in touch with your health at this time, very in touch with your emotional needs, balanced against your daily routines. And we will be setting up here for the new moon, which will be occurring on Monday, September 6th. So we'll talk about that in a week. How about that? And then finally, later into the night, we have a square, and that's going to be between Venus in Libra and Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. Now, this flexibility of this Pluto retrograde in Capricorn energy can be very useful, but it can also create tension, especially when you are looking at the potential for new partnerships. Remember that Venus is not just about love, but can also be about one's salary, paychecks, the hustle, money coming in, finances, the fertility of finances. So that if people perceive in you some kind of trait which would make it undesirable to work with you, even if it's just perceived, when you have that transit where it's squaring Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, it's not a particularly favorable time to be putting yourself out there for that. And also to keep in mind that the traits of the 12th lunar mansion are also a bit disharmonious for that. So if you find yourself inspired to write emails the evening of Sunday, September 5th, regarding business proposals, it might not be the best time to do that. Remember, people do look at timestamps nowadays, and it might be sending a message that is not included in the text of your email. Let's just say it that way. Thank you so much for joining me for your general ephemera and astrology for the week of August 30th through September 5th. And I look forward to seeing you again very, soon.